Don't give up on your dreams. Chapter 1. The rain was relentless that evening, drumming against the windows of a small apartment in the heart of the city. The streets below were nearly empty, shining with the reflection of neon signs and passing headlights. But inside that dimly lit apartment, the world felt even darker. Armand sat at his old wooden desk, his elbows resting heavily on the surface, his hands clutching a letter that had arrived only hours ago. The paper was slightly crumpled now, not because of careless handling, but because of the frustration with which he had read it again and again. The words were short, formal, and merciless. We regret to inform you that your application has not been successful. This was not the first rejection. It was the third. 3 times he had applied to the university he dreamed of. 3 times his hope had risen with sleepless nights of preparation, and 3 times it had been crushed in an instant. His eyes drifted. Across the room, on the wall hung sketches of buildings he had drawn since his teenage years, skyscrapers with bold designs, graceful bridges, houses filled with light and open space. Those drawings were his dream made visible. But tonight, even they seemed to mock him. Maybe I'm not cut out for this, he muttered to himself, his voice cracking. Maybe all I've ever been is just ordinary. The room was quiet, except for the hum of the desk lamp and the storm outside. For a moment, Armand felt utterly alone, as though the entire world had turned its back on him. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Before he could answer, the door creaked open and his father stepped inside. His father was a simple man, grey hair, calloused hands from years of running a small repair shop, and eyes that carried both exhaustion and kindness. He immediately noticed the letter in Armand's hands. Without a word, he walked over, gently, took it, and read it. His expression didn't change much, but the silence that followed was heavy. Finally, he placed the letter back on the desk and looked at his son. Armand, he began, his voice calm but firm. I know this hurts. I know it feels like the end. But let me tell you something. When I was your age, I failed more times than I can count. I tried to open a business, and it collapsed. I tried again, and it collapsed again. People laughed at me. Even family told me to give up. But I didn't. And because I didn't, you grew up with food on this table and a roof over your head. Armand clenched his fists. But Dad, this is different. Architecture isn't just about hard work, it's about talent, money, the right schools. I don't have any of that. Maybe I was just dreaming too big. His father's eyes narrowed. He put a strong hand on Armand's shoulder. Listen to me carefully, son. The world will give you 100 reasons to quit. But if you quit on yourself, you won't even need one. Failure doesn't define you, it prepares you. Every closed door is a lesson. Every rejection is a push in a new direction. What matters is whether you still believe in your dream. Armand wanted to argue, but he couldn't. The words touched something deep inside him, though his heart was too heavy to admit it. His father stood up, heading toward the door. Before leaving, he paused and said one last thing. Dreams are not for the lucky, Armand. They are for the stubborn, the ones who refuse to give up. The door closed, and the room was silent again. Armand leaned back in his chair, staring at the cracked ceiling. His chest felt tight, his mind a battlefield between doubt and hope. The rejection letter still lay on the desk, a symbol of defeat. But his father's words echoed louder than the storm outside. He lay in bed later that night, unable to sleep. The city had quieted, the rain had slowed, but inside him, a storm still raged. Part of him whispered, let it go, you're not meant for this. Another part, small, faint, but alive, whispered back, try again, just once more. And sometimes, even the faintest whisper can become a roar. Armand didn't know it yet. But this night, this moment of despair, was not the end of his dream. It was the beginning of a journey that would test his strength, break his limits, and show him who he truly was. The fall was painful, but the climb had only just begun. Chapter 2. The struggle. The morning after the storm was quiet. The sky was clear, but Armand's heart was still heavy. He dragged himself out of bed, his eyes swollen from a restless night. He stood at the window, looking down at the street where children played on their way to school. Shopkeepers raised shutters, and buses rumbled past. Life went on for everyone, but for him, it felt like time had stopped. He picked up his sketchbook from the desk. It was filled with lines, designs, and dreams, bridges stretching across rivers, glass towers that reached the clouds, homes filled with light. He ran his fingers across the pages, then shut it with a thud. What use are drawings if nobody believes in them? But then, his father's words from last night echoed again. Dreams are not for the lucky, Armand, they are for the stubborn. Those words refused to leave his mind. That morning, instead of giving up, Armand made a decision. If the university doors were closed for him, he would find another way to keep moving forward. He didn't know how yet, but he couldn't let his dream die in silence. Days turned into weeks. Armand began waking up earlier than before. Every morning he would take his sketchbook and head to the city square. There he sketched buildings, old and new, tall and small. Sometimes he sketched people. Sometimes he just studied how the light and shadows danced across the walls of the marketplace. One day, as he sat on the bench drawing, an old man approached him. He was wearing a worn-out coat and carrying a bag of groceries. He paused, watching Armand's pencil move quickly across the page. "You draw well," the man said with a smile. "Are you an architect?" Armand hesitated. The words stung. "Not yet," he replied quietly. The man nodded. "Keep going then. Every building starts with a single line." The words, though simple, filled Armand with unexpected strength. But life wasn't easy. His family struggled financially. His father's small repair shop barely earned enough to pay rent and bills. Sometimes Armand felt guilty for chasing such a big dream when survival itself was difficult at night. While his father slept, Armand secretly took up part-time jobs delivering food, fixing shelves at a store, even cleaning offices. He would work until midnight, then return home exhausted. Yet, no matter how tired he was, he never let go of his sketchbook. Every night, before sleeping, he sketched at least one design. Some were messy, some incomplete, but each one was a reminder that he hadn't given up. One evening, after finishing a long shift at the restaurant, Armand walked home with aching feet. The streets were quiet, lit only by the pale glow of streetlights. He was exhausted, but as he passed by a construction site, he stopped. The half-built structure stood tall in the night, its skeleton of steel reaching into the sky. Workers had left their tools behind. Scaffolding surrounded the walls, and the faint smell of concrete still lingered in the air. Armand stood there for a long time, staring at it. Despite his pain, despite his struggles, his heart raced. "This is where I belong," he thought. "One day, I will build something like this, something even greater." He clenched his fists, his exhaustion replaced by determination. But determination alone wasn't enough. The next day, when he tried to apply for an internship at a small architecture firm, he was rejected again. The manager, a young man in a neat suit, didn't even look at his sketches. "You don't have a degree," the man said flatly. "We only take students from top universities." The words cut deep, but Armand didn't argue. He quietly walked out of the office, holding his sketchbook tightly against his chest. For a moment, he stood outside, staring at the bustling city around him. His chest felt heavy, and tears threatened to fall. He wanted to scream, to throw his sketches away, to give up completely. But then he remembered the old man's words in the square. Every building starts with a single line. Armand opened his sketchbook right there on the sidewalk, took out his pencil, and began drawing. His hands shook, his heart ached, but the lines appeared on the page. People stared at him strangely, but he didn't care. He was struggling, yes. He was failing, yes, but he was still drawing, still moving, still alive. That night, lying in bed, his body sore from work, and his mind tired from rejection, Armand whispered to himself, "This is hard, harder than I ever imagined. But I will not stop. Even if the world says no, I will keep going." And, though his journey had only begun, something inside him shifted. He was no longer just a dreamer. He was a fighter. The struggle had begun, and Armand was ready to face it. Chapter 3. The first spark of hope. Weeks of struggle turned into months. Armand's days were long and heavy. Mornings spent sketching in the city square, afternoons at small jobs, nights working in restaurants or offices. His body was tired, but his heart still carried that small spark of determination. But one evening something happened that began to change everything. It was a cool evening in early spring. Armand sat on the edge of the fountain in the central square, his sketchbook resting on his lap. He was drawing the old clock tower that stood proudly at the end of the street. His pencil moved with quiet confidence now, the lines flowing naturally. People often passed him by without notice, but today a woman stopped. She was middle-aged, wearing a neat coat and carrying a leather bag. She stood silently for a while, watching his hands as they worked across the paper. When Armin finally looked up, surprised, she smiled. "You draw beautifully," she said, warmly. "Are you studying architecture?" Armin hesitated, just like he always did when asked that question. "No, I applied, but I didn't get in." His voice was soft, tinged with shame. The woman tilted her head thoughtfully. "Really? That's surprising. May I?" She gestured toward his sketchbook. Armin nodded reluctantly. She flipped through the pages, her eyes widening as she saw his designs, bridges, buildings, entire city layouts he had dreamed of. She lingered on one drawing of a glass tower reflecting sunlight. "These are very good," she said finally. "Very professional." Armin lowered his gaze. "Thank you, but nobody seems to believe that. Every place I go, they tell me I need a degree." The woman closed the sketchbook gently and looked at him with a kind but firm expression. "A degree is important, yes, but passion, creativity, and persistence matter just as much. My name is Mrs. Farrer, and I'm a lecturer at the City College of Design. We're holding a small exhibition next month for young artists and aspiring designers. I think you should participate." Armin's eyes widened. "Me? In an exhibition?" Mrs. Farrer smiled. "Yes, you. Bring your best sketches. You may not have a degree yet, but your talent deserves to be seen." That night, Armin could barely sleep. He kept replaying her words in his mind. Your talent deserves to be seen. For the first time in months, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. The following weeks were intense. Armin threw himself into preparation for the exhibition. Every free moment, he refined his drawings, adding detail, shading, perspective. His sketchbook became filled with life, energy, and ambition. He worked harder at his part-time jobs, saving enough to buy better paper, pencils, and even a second-hand portfolio case. For once, exhaustion didn't weigh him down, it fueled him. Father noticed the change. One evening, as Armin sat at the desk sketching late into the night, his father brought him a cup of tea and placed it beside him. "So," his father said with a small smile, "you found your fire again." Armin looked up, tired but glowing with determination. "Yes, I have to try. Maybe this exhibition will be the beginning of something." His father nodded. "That's my son, remember. No matter what happens, showing up and trying is already a victory." The day of the exhibition finally arrived. The college hall was filled with paintings, sculptures, and architectural designs from young talents all across the city. The walls glowed with color and creativity, and the air buzzed with excitement. Armin stood nervously near his small display table. His hands trembled as he arranged his sketches in neat rows. He had never shown his work to so many strangers before. At first, people just walked by, glancing quickly and moving on. Doubt crept into his chest. "Maybe I don't belong here," he thought. "Maybe they'll all laugh at me." But then, a group of students stopped in front of his table. One of them picked up a sketch of his glass tower and gasped, "This is amazing. Did you really draw this?" Armin nodded shyly. Soon, more people gathered. Some asked questions, others complimented his vision. A few even asked if he sold his designs. For the first time, strangers were looking at his dream, believing in it. At the end of the evening, Mrs. Farrer walked over. Her eyes shone with pride. "You see, Armin, I told you. Your dream is alive. Don't ever doubt it again." Armin looked around at the crowd, still admiring his sketches. His heart felt lighter than it had in years. For the first time, he realized that his dream wasn't impossible. It was only the beginning. Chapter 4. The opportunity. The exhibition had ended, but its effect on Armin's heart remained long after the lights of the hall went dark. For the first time in years, he had felt seen, truly seen, not as a rejected student or a failed applicant, but as a creator with something valuable to offer. That night, as he carefully placed his sketches back into his portfolio, he whispered to himself, "This is only the beginning." Over the next week, life began to feel different. His routine of work and sketching continued, but there was new energy in his steps. Whenever doubt whispered, the memory of strangers admiring his drawing spoke louder. One evening, as he was cleaning tables at the restaurant, his phone buzzed with an unknown number. Hesitant, he answered. "Hello, is this Armin?" a voice asked. "Yes, speaking," he replied, unsure. "This is Mr. Kamel, an architect. I attended the exhibition last week. I saw your designs, especially the one with the glass tower. Impressive work. Tell me, are you available to assist part-time at my firm?" Armin nearly dropped the phone. His heart pounded. Assist? At your firm? Yes, it would be small tasks at first, drafting, organizing plans, maybe making models, but I believe you have potential. If you're interested, come to my office tomorrow. Armin stammered out a yes, thank you, before the call ended. He stood frozen, his mind racing. After months of rejection, disappointment, and silent struggle, here it was an opportunity. The next morning, Armin dressed carefully in his best shirt, though it was slightly faded. He carried his portfolio tightly under his arm as he entered Mr. Kamel's small but bustling architecture firm. Inside, the walls were lined with blueprints and models of buildings in various stages of design. Engineers and designers moved quickly from desk to desk, their conversations filled with terms Armin barely understood. Mr. Kamal, a tall man with sharp features and confident eyes, greeted him with a firm handshake. Welcome, Armin. Let's see that portfolio again. Armin handed it over, his hands trembling slightly. Mr. Kamal flipped through the pages with a focused gaze, nodding occasionally. You have raw talent, he said finally. Your lines are strong, your perspective is sharp. You lack formal training, but passion like this is rare. If you're willing to learn, I'm willing to teach. Armin's chest swelled with relief and gratitude. I'll do anything. I just want to learn, sir. The first weeks at the firm were not glamorous. Armin fetched files, made copies of blueprints, and even served tea during meetings. But he didn't complain. Instead, every free moment, he observed watching how the senior architects discussed projects, how they measured and corrected drafts, how they turned ideas into reality. At night, after his shift, he returned home and practiced what he had seen. His sketchbook began filling with new ideas, detailed floor plans, improved perspectives, and more realistic designs. One afternoon, while organizing blueprints, he overheard two architects discussing a small housing project. They were stuck on how to fit more natural light into the narrow design. That night, Armin couldn't stop thinking about it. He sketched and erased, until finally, he had an idea, a clever window placement that would maximize sunlight. The next day, nervously, he showed the sketch to Mr. Kamal. I was just thinking about yesterday's project. Maybe something like this could work. Mr. Kamal studied the drawing in silence. Then, slowly, he smiled. This is good, very good. In fact, it might just work. Well done, Armin. Armin's heart leaped. For the first time, his ideas had contributed to a real project. That evening, walking home under the golden sunset, Armin felt a surge of emotion. The boy who once sat in the dark with rejection letters now stood on the threshold of his dream. It wasn't success, yet it wasn't fame or recognition, but it was a chance. And sometimes, one chance is all a dreamer needs. Armin clenched his fist and whispered to himself, this is it. This is my opportunity. I won't waste it. Chapter 5. The tester man had been at Mr. Kamel's firm for almost 3 months. Every day felt like a new lesson. He had learned how to read blueprints, how to use drafting tools, and how even the smallest details could change the flow of an entire design. But up until now, his role had been simple: fetching files, cleaning models, or quietly observing the architects at work. He was comfortable with that. It was safe. That comfort, however, was about to be shaken. One Monday morning, the office buzzed with unusual energy. Mr. Kamal walked in carrying a thick folder and called the team. Together, we have been asked to submit a proposal for the new community library, he announced. It's a small project, but important. The client wants something modern yet welcoming, a place that feels open and alive. We only have 2 weeks to prepare our designs. The architects exchanged serious glances. Everyone knew that winning even a small project like this could boost the firm's reputation. Then, to Armin's shock, Mr. Kamal turned to him. Armin, you'll work with us on this project. I want you to prepare some concept sketches. Nothing final, just ideas. Show me how you think. Armin froze. His heart skipped me. Sir, I've never. Mr. Kamal raised a hand. I know you're new, but you have talent. Don't waste this chance. Bring me something by the end of the week. The room was silent. Some of the other junior architects frowned slightly, as if they doubted Armin's ability. Armin felt the weight of their eyes, the pressure building in his chest. This wasn't just a sketch in his notebook anymore. This was a real test. The following days were some of the hardest Armin had ever faced. He worked his part-time jobs, then stayed up until dawn sketching ideas for the library. His small desk was buried under crumpled papers. At first, his designs felt flat, too simple, too ordinary. He grew frustrated, tearing page after page. His old doubts returned. What if I'm not good enough? What if everyone laughs at my design? One night, exhausted, he leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. His father peeked into the room, carrying a plate of food. Still working, his father asked gently. Armin sighed. I can't get it right. Every time I draw, it looks wrong. What if Mr. Kamal regrets giving me this chance? His father placed the plate on the desk and sat beside him. Son, when I built my shop, the first shelves collapsed. The second ones too. I kept failing until I found the right way. But I didn't stop, because people needed a place to come, to find what they were looking for. Isn't that what a library is? A place for people. Armin stared at him, his mind sparking. A place for people. That was it. He grabbed his pencil and began to draw again, this time with fresh energy. Instead of focusing only on walls and windows, he thought about people, students searching for knowledge, children reading under sunlight, old men sitting quietly by the window. He designed wide open spaces with tall windows to let in light. He added cozy corners where people could sit, read, and feel at home. By sunrise, his hands were aching, his eyes heavy, but before him lay the sketch of something that felt alive, a library filled with warmth and possibility. The day came to present his ideas. His palms were sweaty as he placed the drawings on Mr. Kamal's desk. The senior architects gathered round, curious. Mr. Kamal studied the sketches for a long moment. The room was silent, the tension unbearable. Finally, he looked up at Armin, his expression unreadable. Tell me about this design. Armin swallowed his fear and spoke. I wanted the library to feel like more than a building. I wanted it to feel like a second home. That's why I used large windows for natural light, and wide spaces where people could gather. Knowledge should feel open, not closed. For a moment, nobody said anything. Then Mr. Kamal's lips curved into a smile. Excellent. Very good. Thinking, Armin, you understood the heart of the project, not just the structure. We'll refine this further, but your idea will be the base of our proposal. Armin's chest tightened with joy. He had done it. For the first time, his design was not only seen, but accepted as part of a real project. The other architects nodded reluctantly, some even impressed. The boy who had once been fetching tea was now contributing ideas. That night, as Armin walked home under the city lights, he felt a sense of pride he had never known before. His journey was still long, filled with challenges and uncertainty. But this was proof that he could stand in the world of architects, even without a degree. Even with rejection behind him, it was his first real test, and he had passed. Chapter 6. The setback. 4 days after the library proposal, Armin walked with his head held a little higher. He wasn't arrogant. He still fetched files, carried models, and brewed tea when asked, but deep inside, a quiet fire burned. He had proven at least once that he could contribute something valuable. When the firm officially submitted the proposal to the city council, Mr. Kamal himself placed Armin's sketch at the front of the presentation. The team applauded him, and for the first time, he felt like he truly belonged. But life has a way of testing dreamers. Just when you start to believe, it throws a storm in your path. 2 weeks later, the firm received another project, one far more complex than the library. It was a commercial plaza designed for a wealthy client. The client wanted something bold, modern, and attention-grabbing. Mr. Kamal, impressed by Armin's earlier work, surprised him again. Armin, I want you to prepare some preliminary designs for this project as well, he said. Armin's heart skipped. Another chance. Already, he nodded eagerly, but this time, things didn't go as smoothly. Armin worked tirelessly for nights, filling his sketchbook with ideas. Tall glass structures, open courtyards, sleek curves. He tried everything he had seen in magazines and architecture blogs. He poured his energy into it, convinced he could replicate the spark of the library project. When the day of the internal presentation came, Armin laid out his drawings on the long wooden table. The senior architects gathered, along with the client himself, stern-looking businessman in an expensive suit. Mr. Kamal gestured. Go ahead, Armin. Show us what you've got. Armin's throat tightened, but he began explaining his vision. He spoke about modern design, clean lines, and aesthetic appeal. He pointed at the sketches with shaky hands, trying to sound confident, but halfway through, the client interrupted him. His voice was cold. "This looks ordinary. I've seen this 100 times before. Do you expect me to spend millions on something I could find in a magazine?" The words cut deep. The client flipped through the sketches carelessly, then pushed them aside. "Unimpressive. I expected better from your firm, Mr. Kamal." The room was silent. Armin's face burned with shame. After the meeting, the senior architects avoided his eyes. One of them muttered, "Told you he wasn't ready." Armin stood frozen, his sketches still lying abandoned on the table. Mr. Kamal glanced at him, his expression calm but serious. "You tried, Armin, but understand this design is not about copying trends. It's about vision. Find your voice, or you'll always remain in the shadows." Those words struck him harder than the client's insult. That night, Armin returned home later than usual. He dropped his bag on the floor and collapsed on his bed. His father entered quietly, sensing his son's heavy heart. "What happened?" he asked gently. Armin shook his head. "I failed. I thought I could do it again, like with the library. But the client hated my design. Everyone looked at me like I didn't belong. Maybe they're right. Maybe I was lucky the first time." His father sat beside him. "Do you know the difference between a stumble and a fall?" Armin frowned. "What do you mean?" His father smiled faintly. "A stumble makes you slow down. A fall keeps you on the ground. Right now, you've only stumbled, but if you stop trying, then it becomes a fall." Armin looked at him, tears stinging his eyes. "But it hurts. It hurts so much." His father placed a hand on his shoulder. "Dreams always hurt before they heal. That's why so few chase them. The pain is the test." That night, long after his father had gone to bed, Armin sat again at his desk. He opened his sketchbook and stared at the failed designs. He wanted to rip them apart, to erase every line. But instead, he whispered to himself, "I stumbled, not fallen. I will rise again." And with that, he turned the page to a fresh sheet and began to draw. Chapter 7. The breakthrough. The days after the client's rejection felt heavier than bricks. At the office, Armin sensed whispers whenever he walked past. Some colleagues were kind, but others smirked, as if his failure had proven their doubts correct. He kept his head down, doing the small tasks he was given, but inside, a storm raged. Every night, he returned home and sketched, not for the firm, not for any client, just for himself. At first, his hand trembled with hesitation. He drew buildings that looked too safe, too ordinary, too much like the ones he thought others wanted. But gradually, something changed. One evening, as he sat by the window listening to the sound of rain, he closed his eyes and asked himself, "What do I really want my buildings to say? What do I want people to feel when they see them?" The question unlocked something inside him. He remembered the narrow streets of his childhood, the old neighborhood where kids played cricket until sunset, where neighbors sat together sharing stories, where every brick carried warmth and belonging. He thought about how architecture wasn't just about walls and glass, it was about people, emotions, and memories. Buildings weren't cold structures, they were living spaces that told stories. Armin's pencil began to move with new energy. His sketches transformed. No longer copies of glossy magazine towers, they carried personality. Courtyards where children could play, open terraces where families could gather, spaces that connected people rather than isolating them. He wasn't just drawing buildings anymore, he was drawing dreams. The next morning, Armin arrived at the office with a new kind of determination. He didn't show his sketches to anyone yet. They were too personal, too raw. But slowly, opportunities began to appear. One evening, Mr. Kamal noticed Armin still at his desk after everyone had left. He walked over quietly and saw the pages spread before him. "What's this?" the mentor asked. Armin froze. "Just experiments. Nothing official." Mr. Kamal picked up one sheet and studied it carefully. His usual stern face softened. This is different." Armin swallowed hard. "Different in a bad way?" "No," Mr. Kamal said firmly. "Different in your way. You're finally drawing what you believe in, not what you think others expect. This," he tapped the page, "is your voice." Armin felt a surge of warmth. For the first time since his setback, hope returned like a sunrise breaking through dark clouds. A few weeks later, fate offered him another chance. The city announced a community housing project, a design competition open to firms across the region. The brief was clear: affordable housing that didn't just shelter people, but created a sense of community. When Mr. Kamal gathered his team, he looked at Armin and said, "This one. I want you to lead the concept sketches." The room went silent. Some raised their eyebrows in disbelief. Others smirked, as if waiting for another failure. But Armin's heart pounded with excitement. This was at the moment to prove not only to the world, but to himself, that he had found his path. That night, he opened his sketchbook again. No doubts this time, no fear of rejection, just pure vision. And as his pencil danced across the page, he whispered to himself, "I've stumbled, but I haven't fallen. This is where I rise." Chapter 8. The competition. The announcement of the community housing project competition spread like wildfire through the city's architectural firms. It wasn't just another assignment, it was the kind of project that could define a career. Whoever won would have their designs built into reality, their name carved into the city's future. For Armin, this was both thrilling and terrifying. The morning the firm began its preparations. The conference room buzzed with energy. Blueprints, laptops, and rolls of tracing paper filled the tables. Teams argued over ideas, sketches were pinned to boards, and excitement mixed with rivalry. When Mr. Kamal declared that Armin would lead the concept design, the atmosphere shifted. Some colleagues clapped politely, but others exchanged doubtful glances. One whispered just loud enough for Armin to hear, "Bold move, giving him another chance." Armin ignored it, but the words sank like stones in his chest. That night, Armin stayed late at the office, staring at the blank page in front of him. The pressure was different this time. It wasn't just about proving himself. It was about creating something that mattered to people, who would one day live inside those walls. He closed his eyes and remembered his childhood neighborhood, mothers sharing food across balconies, children running through open courtyards, elders sitting together at dusk, trading stories under the fading sky. He whispered to himself, "This can't just be housing, it has to be home." His hand moved steadily. Wide courtyards in the center of clusters, small rooftop gardens where families could grow herbs and vegetables, open passageways filled with light, not shadows, simple, affordable, but rich with warmth. As the hours slipped by, a new world began to take shape on his pages. The next morning, he nervously presented his sketches to the team. Some frowned, others tilted their heads in thought. Finally, Mr. Kamal spoke. "This," he said, tapping one of the drawings, "is exactly what this city needs. Not just walls but community." The approval gave Armin a spark of courage. Over the next weeks, the firm worked tirelessly. Armin guided the design process with a confidence that surprised even himself. For the first time, his colleagues began to respect him not because of his title, but because of his vision. Still, the competition was fierce. Rumors swirled that one of the rival firms had hired a celebrity architect from abroad, someone whose name alone could impress the judges. At times, Armin felt his confidence waver. Could his simple, heartfelt designs compete against glossy, futuristic towers? One evening, exhausted, he walked home through the narrow lanes of the old city. He passed children playing cricket, women chatting from windows, and a tea vendor laughing with customers. And then it struck him. The foreign architect might design stunning glass towers, but Armin understood this city, these people, their lives and dreams. His design wasn't about impressing outsiders, it was about belonging. That realization lifted the weight off his shoulders. The day of the competition presentation arrived. The hall was grand, filled with judges, journalists, and representatives from every major firm. Models of buildings stood proudly on display, gleaming skyscrapers, futuristic cubes, dazzling designs that looked like they belonged in glossy magazines. When it was his turn, Armin walked up to the stage, palms sweating. For a brief second, he froze under the bright lights. The crowd blurred before his eyes. Then, he remembered his father's words. "Failure doesn't mean you're finished. It only means you have to try again in a different way." Taking a deep breath, Armin began to speak. His voice trembled at first, but grew stronger as he explained his vision, not just housing, but homes where families could live with dignity and joy. He spoke of courtyards that brought neighbors together, gardens that gave life to rooftops, and spaces designed for people, not just profit. As he held up his sketches, there was silence in the room, not the silence of boredom, but the silence of listening. For the first time, Armin wasn't just presenting a design, he was sharing his heart. Chapter 9. The verdict. The room was still when Armand finished speaking. For a few seconds he stood frozen on the stage, his sketches trembling slightly in his hands. His heart pounded so loudly that he could hear nothing else. Then, the hall erupted into polite applause, some clapping lightly, some more genuinely, but none dismissively. Armand exhaled, shoulders loosening as he returned to his seat. Still, doubt gnawed at him. Was polite applause enough to win against glamorous, futuristic designs? The judges whispered among themselves at the long table. One leaned forward, studying his sketches again. Another tapped a pen thoughtfully against her notepad. Armand couldn't read their expressions. Were they impressed, or simply trying to find polite words of rejection? As the presentations ended, tension filled the air. Dozens of architects, young and old, sat waiting for the results. Some were confident, chatting easily. Others fidgeted nervously. Armand clasped his hands together under the table, whispering silently, "Please, let them see what I saw." Finally, the head judge, a woman with silver hair and sharp eyes, stepped up to the microphone. Her voice echoed through the hall. "Today, we have witnessed many remarkable designs. Each has demonstrated creativity, innovation, and ambition, but only one design captured not only our eyes, but also our hearts." The room hushed. Armand's pulse quickened. The judge continued, "This design reminded us that architecture is not only about glass and steel, but about people, about how families live, connect, and grow together. It is a design rooted in community, in culture, and in hope for a better tomorrow." Armand's chest tightened. Could it be? "The winner of the community housing project competition," the judge announced, pausing for what felt like an eternity, "is Armand Khan and his team." The hall erupted in applause, louder and warmer than before. Armand sat, frozen, almost unable to process the words. His teammates patted him on the back, cheering. Mr. Kamal, usually so calm and composed, smiled with pride. "Go on, Armand," he whispered. "This is your moment." Slowly, Armand rose and walked to the stage again, this time not with trembling hands, but with tears glistening in his eyes. The judges shook his hand one by one, praising the sincerity of his vision. Reporters scribbled notes, cameras flashed, and for the first time in his life, Armand felt the weight of recognition, not for being perfect, but for being true to himself. That evening, after the ceremony, Armand stepped outside into the cool night air. The city stretched before him, lights twinkling like stars against the dark sky. He thought about the years of rejection, the long nights of doubt, the whispers of failure, and then he thought of his father's words, "If one door closes, find another, but never give up on your dreams." He smiled softly to himself. This victory wasn't just about winning a competition, it was proof that every failure had been leading him here, that every setback was shaping him into the man who could finally succeed. Yet, as he looked at the skyline, Armand knew this was not the end of his journey. This was only the beginning. Bigger challenges awaited, and greater dreams called out to him. But for the first time, he felt ready. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. Chapter 1. Oh, the new beginning. The weeks following the victory felt like a dream. Armand had once been too afraid to imagine. His face appeared in local newspapers. His name was spoken in industry circles where he had once been invisible. The competition had not only given him recognition, it had given him a place at the table. But Armand didn't let the spotlight blind him. Deep down, he remembered the dark nights when rejection weighed heavier than stone, the whispers that called him a failure, the times he almost gave up. Success, he knew now, wasn't just about applause, it was about persistence, about refusing to let go when the world tried to pull your dreams from your hands. The community housing project moved into development. For the first time, Armand wasn't just sketching concepts for someone else's vision, he was leading. His designs, born from memory and emotion, began taking shape in bricks and beams. He walked through the construction site one morning, the air filled with the sound of hammers and cement mixers. Children from the neighborhood peeked curiously at the rising walls, their laughter ringing through the air. Armand's chest swelled with pride. This isn't just architecture, he thought. This is life being built. And when he saw families touring the site, mothers pointing excitedly at open courtyards, fathers smiling at sunlit balconies, children already running in half-finished play areas, Armand's eyes grew wet. This was exactly what he had dreamed of, spaces that connected people, homes that carried warmth. One evening, after a long day at the site, Armin visited his parents. His father sat in the veranda, reading, while his mother prepared tea. "Abba," Armin said, sitting beside him, "the project is going well. They say it might even become a model for future housing." His father looked up, his weathered face breaking into a smile. "I always knew you would do something that mattered. Remember what I told you?" Armin nodded. "Never give up on your dreams." For the first time, those words didn't feel like a distant promise. They felt like truth. Months later, the housing project was completed. The inauguration was simple but heartfelt. Families moved in, children played in the courtyards, and laughter filled the spaces that had once been only lines on Armin's sketchbook. During the ceremony, Mr. Kamal stood beside him. "You've come a long way, Armin," he said quietly. "You stumbled, you fell, but you rose again. That's what makes a true architect, not talent alone, but courage." Armin smiled, his gaze fixed on the new homes glowing under the evening sun. "This is only the beginning. I want to design schools, libraries, community centers, places that give hope, not just shelter." Mr. Kamal nodded, pride shining in his eyes. "And you will." That night, Armin walked home under the starry sky. The city lights shimmered around him, not as distant towers but as living dreams. He thought of his failures, his struggles, and how close he had come to surrendering. But he hadn't. He had chosen to keep going. He paused, looked up at the sky, and whispered to himself, "Dreams don't die unless you let them, and I never will." With steady steps, Armin moved forward, not as the boy once haunted by rejection, but as a man who had learned that every fall was just a step toward rising higher. And so began the next chapter of his life, one not bound by fear, but fueled by faith, resilience, and the unwavering belief that as long as you hold on, dreams will always find a way to live. Message: Armin completes the housing project, honors his father's words, and steps into a future filled with purpose. The story closes with a powerful reminder. Dreams may bend, they may take time, but if you never give up, they will rise with you. Epilogue: the lesson of Armin's journey. Armin's story is not just about architecture. It is about persistence, resilience, and the courage to hold on when the world says, "Let go." We all carry dreams, some small, some grand, some that seem impossible. Along the way, we stumble. We face rejection, doubt, and voices that whisper, "You are not enough." But dreams are not measured by how quickly they are achieved. They are measured by how fiercely we guard them, even in the darkest of nights. Armin learned that failure is not the end, is a stepping stone. Each closed door pushed him toward a better one. Each setback carved strength into his character. Each no carried him closer to the yes that changed everything. And so his journey leaves us with one timeless truth. Don't give up on your dreams. They are not fragile wishes. They are seeds. With patience, persistence, and faith, they will grow into something greater than you ever imagined.